in the 1830s, this group of fugitive slaves and free blacks like Priscilla Baltimore and John Baltimore, they cross over into this wilderness, and at a certain point they develop a community. It's 11 families.
I can't help but to look at Mother Priscilla Baltimore because she was originally from Kentucky, where she was born a slave, and her father was her master. And when she left Kentucky, she left because she purchased her own freedom from her father. And then she made the trip from Kentucky to St. Louis, where they sold slaves on the courthouse steps. She had a pass in order to be free in St. Louis. But when she looked across the bridge and across the water of the Mississippi River and saw this area, she knew this was where freedom was.
And once a town is built near where they are hiding out, so to speak, they become the first group of peoples to buy into the land, to buy into that town. So it becomes the first town in which a majority of the population, almost everyone in the town initially, was black. So it's the first black town.
Quinn Chapel AME Church. As you can see, it was originally built in 1839, rebuilt in 1873. Now, as rumors have it, this church was part of what was known as the Underground Railroad, which makes this a very historic monument here.
It's a very touching story if you look at what she had to, just think about it, what she had to go through just to get to here. And then once she was here, what she had to do in order to make sure that there was a Brooklyn, Illinois.
Brooklyn's history from 1870 to 1910 presages what would become the dominant phenomena in urban America, particularly for African American people.
Our new garbage truck here. Well, it's new to us. Yes, it's new to us. We've only had it some months. They had a usual pickup day twice a week, and the truck got so bad we can only pick up like once a week, and then we end up getting this one here.
Questions around the environment, questions around poverty. Black towns have fared very poorly, historically, but particularly since the 60s. For whatever reasons, they've become sites for dumps.
Our first cleanup, we had about 40 students from all over the country, and it was just really enlightening, the diligence and hard work that they put into cleaning up the cemetery. The second day of our cleanup, some of the students actually, was like emotional about, the way the cemetery had been left. He showed us a specific one was Henry Hawkins, which was his grandfather. And we began to talk about, the plight of the cemetery being so overgrown, and people began to use it as a dumping site.
This was the very first community to form its own township as a black community. We were the first little black town, and every July 8th is when the town celebration is, but you find that there is actually no activities. There's no write-ups or anybody prints anything concerning it whatsoever. It's just a thing of where it seems like most of the time the government has waited for this little community to just dry up and blow away. If this was a white community and this town was as old as what it is, and this was the birthplace really of, as you say, the black township and everything, the government would do everything within its power in order to sustain that community. You wouldn't find the streets looking like this. You wouldn't find weeds on all of the lots and things.
All of this was schoolyard. This is where the picture of the school on 6th Street was. I mean, it extended all the way. It took up all of this space right in here. This is where the school cutoff was. There's a house right here. Somebody set it on fire. But just like all of this vacant property here, homes were in here.
At one time, all these lots that you see that are now vacant, that were houses there. Along Route 3, when you came along there and everything, we had everything you would find in any other community. We had restaurants, filling stations, a number of different little businesses that were along the route there and things. There were also homes, but the railroad came in, bought out the people that were here, and then didn't do anything with the property. They left it just vacant, and as the people moved out, the revenue that was here also left with it.
See, that was a service station right there. One service station right there in that vacant spot right there. Now that's the parsonage to that church. That house was the parsonage to the church right there. There were houses all on these vacant lots right here. There were houses here before this house was built. All of these were houses.
There was a horror story that we were told when we first got here about the railroad, and how about 3 decades ago the railroad came, or maybe 2 decades ago, the railroad came and made an offer to this community to purchase some of the homeowners' land, in that they were going to bring an economic stimulant into the community.
It was said that the railroad was buying people out, you know. There was kind of a fright instilled in the minds of some of the people, and they started selling with getting small amounts of money, and these people had to migrate elsewhere, you know, and the town just hit one of those kind of times that things started going down, down, down.
When the people went back to the railroad and said, well, you've not done anything to it, we want to move back on our property, they told them they could move back on the property only if they were not allowed to build any houses. They had to put mobile homes on the property. So that, again, is a slap in the face of the residents here, because now the residences are set up as a transit population, because there's no stability in a mobile home.
The trailer, mobile home, whatever you want to call it. They had none of these, you know, just houses, just like I said, a conglomerate. And the streets were replete with houses, businesses.
You know, we've never really gotten a fair shake with anything. All of the industry, we've never had anything in this community because industry has never settled in this community. They have always settled on the outskirts, Granite City, East St. Louis.
The Civic Center houses what is called the Stites Township. We have a government-funded program called the Earn Fair program, and then we have what is called our General Assistance Office here. Now, we do have some nonprofit organizations there. We have an office for the Boy Scouts downstairs. We have an office for an organization called Better Days. And we should be getting some help from Salvation Army sometime within the next month or so.
You have a majority black-ruled community that is unable to create a viable economy because industry consistently passes it over in favor of other small towns that are predominantly white and ruled by white governments, so that we get an underdevelopment of the economy there.
Still talking about the census too. The citizens haven't given up on that. We, as concerned citizens, I don't care what the Census Bureau is doing, but we still looking to that and gathering a lot of information.
And when you don't have the actual count of the population, then it causes you federal dollars, it causes you state dollars, and it causes you county dollars. Now the county would apply to the Fed for the demographics of Brooklyn because it's a 70% unemployment rate here. And because of those situations, it's hard to market this community because it's been systematically disinvested.
That's one of the reasons why they became involved with the strip clubs and the strip joints that are here now. Nobody was interested in coming in and doing anything.
In St. Louis, you have sections that have their little complex, all right? But for Brooklyn, it becomes the complete and total definition of what the town is about. Even though you don't have residents, they're not able to populate those joints. But for whatever reason, that's the only story you're ever going to get.
Clubs and things that have come in, they've spent a lot of money as far as the community is concerned. But what they've gotten out of the community and surrounding it is much, much more. They haven't. It's not even a tip in the bucket as far as what they've taken, as far as what they've given. But we found over the years that organized crime is interested in little communities that no one else cares about.
Because of the poverty and because the porn industry and these other folk they're able to put up money to get people elected, and within the context of Brooklyn, one can make a good living skimming as mayor.
Contractors came in to do a little business. Well, some of the little handout money and different things like that, which was enticing, I guess, to some of the people in authority, and they kind of went overboard, and they wound up getting incarcerated, you know.
Almost every mayor, with the exception of the gentleman that's in now, Mayor Miller, has gone to jail for one reason or another. As a little boy, Mr. William Terry was the mayor. He was the last mayor that I am familiar with that did not do any prison time. George Thomas, after him, did prison time. Barney Davis didn't do prison time, he got probation. Sister Ruby Cook doing prison time.
Right, and then sometimes they put relatives on the payroll. There's not an interest in keeping the records. And then when you put in the situation with the county board where there's real interest in not having records, because there's been a lot of shady dealings in the past on the part of those commissioners in ripping Brooklyn off.
It's going to be over a $1 billion project. But the design is beautiful. That'll also give us an opportunity to have a real signature bridge. Right now we've got the Gateway Arch that makes the St. Louis area one of the top, most recognizable skylines anywhere in the country.
There's a proposed new bridge that will be crossing the Mississippi from St. Louis, and it's going to end up in the backside of Brooklyn. That's where there'll be a lot of interchanges, and so that, you know, people, just different other communities, municipalities, and counties have began to annex the land in Brooklyn.
With this new signature bridge, it'll also add to the St. Louis skyline not only a transportation mode, but also a very beautiful architectural statement for the St. Louis region. So there's a lot of benefits that we'll get from it. So I'm fully in support of it and working hard to make sure it happens.
The negative part is that there won't be as much traffic, which traffic was one of the center points of this community. You know, people being able to ride through, oh, there's Brooklyn or whatever. That's the negative.
Bringing back a highway that could route people through Brooklyn, thus creating the possibility that some businesses could in fact develop, and it could become some kind of either commercial site or tourist site, but they will pass Brooklyn again, going to another community. So in that sense, it's a continuation of the past. It doesn't have to be that way, but right now it looks like it will be that way.
The negative of development when it comes into communities the size of Brooklyn is that monies are targeted for the community, but major developers come in who don't live in the community and they take the money out. We're hoping that this community will be targeted for development and the people that live here will be a part of the development group, which means that they will benefit financially from the dollars that will be targeted here. That means the money will be able to revolve in this community. Right now, a dollar does not revolve one time in Brooklyn.
Now, the land, Brooklyn's actual geographic territory, is being taken over through a number of shenanigans by white-dominated cities.
A piece of land that's located in St. Clair County with the nearest community to it being Brooklyn, but rather than do that, they take it and they give it to Fairmont City.
St. Clair County had allowed Madison County to cross over into St. Clair and to take the cemetery. We're still very upset about that. We're really trying to see that Brooklyn is given what it deserves as it relates to its land mass. Let's say a developer who wants to do light industry in this area. Then if the annexation is allowed to continue, then there's no place for Brooklyn to have light industry without having to uproot residents. But the positive is, now that they're rerouting Route 3, there'll be room for development within what they call the boundaries of Brooklyn now. Route 3 can now be redeveloped to be what the community wants, not what outside people want or the other powers to be want, but what the community actually wants.
We want the very same thing here that everybody else wants in their community. We want good streets, we want fire safety, we want police safety, we want schools for our children. And in order to do this, we realize that it takes revenue. But it seems like in our case, the government is never really interested in giving enough revenue in order to actually get you on your feet. They don't mind giving you enough to keep you afloat. But in order to get you on your feet and to make you self-sufficient, they don't want to do that.
And there's a light industry commercial park, which would provide jobs. It needs from that services such as grocery store, service station, cleaners. You know, those services that some of us who live in urban areas that have, we take them for granted because we have so many of them.
What is feasible there? What would developers be willing to bring into the area? What looks like the highest and best use for the land? And then bring the citizens, let them look at this as we go through alternatives. I think there's a very good chance that there could be positive development there. Obviously, the goal is not going to be to attract heavy industry, but you are on the river, you're on a working river, you're on a working part of the river, you're right next to all kinds of rail complexes. So there are a number of different kinds of economic things that could be done in the area that right now are being done in farm fields.
But as far as the progress or the plan for development, as long as this community is a part of that planning process, they will be the beneficiaries of the plan and the progress.
But they can only work if there's a kind of political environment in which the state of Illinois, in concert with the residents in that southwest section, are thinking about the overall development of the section that includes East St. Louis, National City, Brooklyn, and Venice.
One of the things that'll make them competitive in competing for these different resources is having a plan. In other words, actually having a plan that lays out what's vacant, what needs to be demolished, what needs to be addressed from contamination, and then laying out the citizens' vision for what they would like their community to be in the future.
They weren't seeking just to be away from slavery, they were also seeking a better life. That type of vision is still possible. It simply becomes a little bit harder now because the forces that impact it are a little more subtle, meaning that on the one hand, it's easy to see what the pornographers have done in terms of Brooklyn. It's less easy to see the impact of the other communities, particularly Madison, right? Or to see the neglect on the part of the state of Illinois.
Right now, even in America, what we're looking at is a situation where all of our humanity is going to be important for all of our salvation. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, we look at Brooklyn as more than just a little community in the southwestern part of Illinois. We look at it as a home and a hope for freedom in America for everybody.
In spite of all of this filth in this community, this town still have a lot of potential.
A lot more than, you know, when you think about it, this community, it is said, is built on hallowed ground. You know, I don't care what the outside influences' intentions are. There's a strength and there's a willingness here in this community for it to survive as it is, as a community and a safe haven for people, not just so much for highways and byways and railroads.
And I just don't feel that it would take too much to turn this town around.
That's Roy Sims. He's been here forever, and he will be here forever.
Yeah.
Now, you the first one. We've been all over town, and you were the very first one that actually walked up to us and asked us what we was doing.
Yeah.
Everybody else just been standing around looking. Now, she's in school, and she's doing like a documentary in an old black town. But we're not trying to send nobody to jail or nothing. But they'll be asking me all this evening when I get out work.
Oh, yeah, you know that.
Didn't I tell you?
They
They
will
will.
say it already, please.
What was you doing all the time? That white girl with that camera. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Y'all like to see nice right about the town, you know?
Something nice.
Yeah.
It will be.
Yeah, something real nice.
Yeah.
It's
All right,
so
keep up
nice.
good work, yeah?